into the book, that bit we just heard, we finished as you were setting off on the first wild American tour. Private plane, limos, luxury hotels. This was the Hermit's Hermit tour of 1967. Tell us how rock and roll luxury it really was.
It was exactly the opposite. The private plane was a DC-8 propeller thing, and it had been a cargo plane that they converted with, I think it had about 8 bunks at the back, which had some seats up the front. And it had so many kind of leaks in it. It couldn't really fly much above 1,500 feet. Which made, and I don't know whether many of you have been to the United States in the summer, it's incredibly hot. So you get all these thermals coming up, especially across the deserts. So most of our travelling days were like being on a roller coaster at Blackpool. The hotels were, to say the least, very, very basic. But
Describe it.
They were kind of always like a kind of always built in a square around the swimming pool. But equally, there was a bed and there was a bath, and that's all you needed. We were 20 years old, 21 years old, 22 years old. But that's all you need at that age. So we had so much fun in those places. So much fun. They were always 2 stories high, with the pool in the middle, so there'd always be a competition of who could dive off the highest part of the building, and needless to say, Keith would start at the top. No, seriously, I mean, they fearless.
So, you survived that and you thought, I'll carry on doing it. I asked him before about this roller coaster flight, and it was, to any normal person, you go, I don't really want to be a rock star anymore, but you carried on.
Yes.
But now, so let's get to the book. Zayn Malik is, I think, starting his second memoir at the moment. He's 25 years old. Why did you take, I don't put this delicately, to the age you are now to write yours?
What can you possibly remember? The age of 25. I mean, when we were 25, we could barely remember the day before. Such was the 60s. I never felt I'd done enough in my life, and that's what's so strange. It's always, I've never quite known how to answer people when they say, what does it feel like to do what you do and have the life you've had? And I kind of feel that hasn't everybody had a life like me? I've never felt, apart from my mates that I used to be with in Shepherd's Bush, I've never been apart from the class I grew up with. I've mixed with all different people, but it's kind of weird. So I'm being really, that's what I wanted to do with this book. I wanted to try and give whoever reads it an idea of what it felt like to be in this whirlwind of a new industry starting up. And it started, sure, rock was around in America with Elvis, and it was a huge business over there, but in England, it didn't really start until the Beatles, and then the Stones, and then the Who, and Pink Floyd, and on we go. But it was a young industry that we were inventing as we went along. And that made it kind of, I don't know, incredibly dangerous, but incredibly exciting, and quite a lot of it kind of terrifying.
Yeah. But we need to go back to your childhood to understand where this rebellion came from. And so the first question, we're on the 5th question already, but the first question I wanted to ask you is the one, this is the first event for this book. You're going to get asked this a lot. Why is it called Thanks a Lot, Mr. Kibblewhite? Who is Mr. Kibblewhite, and why is he getting all the thanks?
Well, it's called that because I didn't do a biography in the same way that most people in my position do their biography, most people in my position, they get offered a book deal, and they do the book deal, and then they write the biography. And I just didn't want to do it that way. I didn't know whether I had a really good story in me. I wanted a good biography. So I got in touch with you and said, would you help me drag this story out of me and give me some guidance on getting it into a book shape? So I did it completely the other way around, and then
We went to a lot of pubs.
then I went to a lot of publishers, and I got a book deal, but I did it on my terms. And when it came to the title, they just wanted to have the usual title of every biography on every shelf everywhere, which is the name of the person and the face of the person. And I thought, oh, why be a sheep amongst a load of sheep? I want to be the dog. And I thought, I don't want to call it Daltrey. I don't want to call it that. I want something from the book, and I want a picture on the front that has a kind of reflection of what I grew up from, what was quite a big influence on the Who career. Gustav Metzger, which was the auto-destructive artist, had a big influence on Pete, which is where our smashing of equipment came from. And I thought, I can do much more with my biography cover. And I had enormous battles with the publishers. And in the end, I kind of thought, I'm going to go to war. And I did the Graham Norton show, and he happened to ask me, I hear you've got your biography coming out, what's it going to be called? And I thought, sod it. I'm going to make them an offer they can't refuse. And I said, it's going to be called Thanks a Lot, Mr. Kibblewhite. And he said, do the publishers know that? I said, no, they do now. And that's why it's called that. That's why the cover is what it is, because I wanted it to be just that little bit different.
But Roger, who is Mr. Kibblewhite?
Oh yeah, Mr. Kibblewhite.
When I asked that question,
I keep trying to avoid that because Mr. Kibblewhite was the headmaster that after giving, I don't mention it in the book, but it was Mr. Kibblewhite. He gave me 6 strokes of the cane on my bare arse. And I've got to tell you, if any of you, I don't know, is there anybody here who's had that too? Could you shout out? If you'd had it, you know what you still remember what it felt like. Ooh, I mean, they didn't have the Quran under their arm either. It was full throttle. So he gave me 6 of the best on my bare arse, then expelled me from the grammar school.
Through no fault of your own.
Well, yeah, from lots of faults of mine. I didn't want to be there. I just wanted to be a rock singer. I'm not a rock singer, I just wanted to be a singer. So as I was leaving his office, as I was literally passing him in the doorway, he said, "You will never make anything of your life, Daltrey." And by that time I was past him. And I thought, oh, bloody well show you. So that's where the title comes from. But what I want to say about Mr. Kibblewhite now is that I realised that he was just a man doing his job in a way that they used to do it in those days. And he was doing his job to the best of his ability. And I was uncontrollable. He needed to get me out of that school. And the thanks a lot, Mr. Kibblewhite, now really is a thank you. It really is.
So you were at Acton Grammar, and this is, you passed your 11 plus with flying. You were an A student at primary school. So this is the sort of social mobility dream. You're on your way to being an accountant or a lawyer or all those dream jobs, Roger. And when did you know it was going wrong, and why didn't it work out?
Well, what happened to me was that I was brought up in Shepherd's Bush, and at the age of 11, passing the 11 plus, we were always encouraged to do as well as we could in that huge exam. And I passed it flying colours. But something really pivotal happened in my life. My parents moved out of Shepherd's Bush. We'd been sharing a house, as most families used to do just after the war, with my cousins. And we had the top half of the house, they had the bottom half, and it was getting very crowded. I was in a house with 5 girls, 3 girl cousins and my 2 sisters. And we happened to get a house given to us, or rented to us, in Bedford Park in Chiswick. Now that is only about probably maximum a mile and 3/4 from where I used to live in Shepherd's Bush. But as the way our class system was in those days, not particularly so much now in London, it was another world. People had gardens with flowers in them. There were trees on the streets. There were no bomb sites to play on. And because I'd moved to Chiswick, I couldn't go to a school in Shepherd's Bush, and the school I had to go to was Acton County. Acton County Grammar School took in people from Ruislip, Harrow, Greenford, and they were all kind of middle class, upper middle class neighbourhoods. And for the first time in my life, I came in contact with a posh accent, and I couldn't understand a word they were saying. I really couldn't. I thought this, and instead of it feeling like an achievement, it felt like a punishment. You know, passing that 11 plus, I thought, what have I gone and done? And being small, I was very small. Then I was very light. Also, the small ones always tend to get bullied. And in those days, the sixth formers used to call the first year students fags, just like the old Tom Brown's School Days book. And you'd have to be there, you know, curtailed and bow and scrape and all that stuff to them. And so I was bullied quite a bit then, and that went on for a couple of years. And then one day I got fed up with it and hit someone with a chair. Because they were bullying me, and I thought, I'm not taking this anymore. And it had such an effect that it pushed me away. They left me alone from then on. Pete has written that I was a bully at school. I don't think I was. I don't think I was a bully. I never went looking for it. But what it did to me was that if ever I felt that it was going to be a fight or flight thing, it would never be flight. And if it was going to be a fight, it was always going to be me going to get the first punch in. Because when you're small, you don't have time. Especially if the bloke's that much bigger.
I just want to pause that at that moment and play a very short extra bit from the audiobook, which we're calling The Flannel Shirt.
I think I struggled more with the conformity than the actual education. I was more rebellious than my cousins. I hated being told what to do. No, that's not true. I was happy enough following orders in the boys' brigade, singing away on the sergeant's shoulders, promenading up and down the beachfront in formation. I was happy sticking to the rules at primary school. In fact, I loved it. I got on well with the teachers. I came top of my class. And my favourite part of the day was the walk to Victoria Junior Boys' School. How many kids can say that? I had to wear short trousers, a vest and a pullover. The pullover was the only cloud on an otherwise clear blue sky. It was made of wool, not nice, soft, comfortable lamb's wool. This was the early 1950s. It was thick, scratchy, horrible wool. Mutton wool, horse wool, steel wool would have been less itchy. I was stuck with that pullover for years and years, and I hated it. Then when I was 8, Mum bought me a grey flannel shirt, and it meant the world to me. Mum used to tell me I could only wear it 2 days in a row, and then it had to be washed. Back to the itchy, scratchy, horrible, bloody pullover. I used to get up at 6 in the morning and wash that shirt, dry it and iron it so I could wear it every day. I was a slave to fashion or comfort.
It's not quite the PlayStation generation, is it?
No. I can still remember that bloody pullover.
Let's take you right back to the beginning. Can we just have a little look at a photo that's in the book? I might have said that a bit. There we are. So who's that person, that lovely girl? That's the girl sitting on the lap.
That's my dad, who's just come home from the war. Yeah.
So what you have your first recollections are actually of your father coming back.
I think it was my father, I'm pretty sure. I hope it was my father. Yeah, I think it's my first recollections. It was. You
write that. Excuse me. You remember this man with webbed boots coming home, and then him being in your mum's bed the next morning.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I hope it was my father. No, that was it. I mean, and the strange thing is, it's still that 2-year-old or that 1-year-old view of a man coming in. Because the webbed boots, that's all I can remember is the boot. I can't remember anything up from that. And I remember a kit bag. I'm sure it was a rifle, but it might have not been. It might have been something. But it might have been equally. In those days, they used to take their rifles home, didn't they?
Yeah, but in trying to work out when you're interviewing someone who's rebelled and gone into whatever they've gone into, you look to their childhood, and usually there's something pretty dark there. But your childhood was happy until you went to the grammar school. Is that right?
It was fabulous. I lived in, like I say, this one house with my 3 cousins, 2 of which were older, my 2 younger sisters and a younger cousin. They were all incredibly bright. They all passed for grammar schools. So the older ones were learning French and speaking in French. They were always talking about Shakespeare and theatre and stuff. So it was wonderful.
And you were in the Boys' Brigade. You were playing.
The Boys' Brigade, I loved the Boys' Brigade. It was brilliant. They teach us things. They teach us about civilization, about society, about politics, all kinds of stuff. It was Methodist Church. I didn't mind that. It was one up from the high church that I used to sing in when I was 7 years old in the choir. Right? That was a bit formal. I didn't like dressing up in a white dress. But Mum seemed to be very proud of me.
But this is the post-war era, and I've asked you this a lot before. This is, it's a difficult time.